The first Sunday we talked about the idea that no one is against us. I don't know if you probably remember that, because I think for a lot of people it's like, how could that be? I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. Statement that no one is against us, and what Gary tells us is that actually the whole universe conspires for us to put in our paths the opportunities to live out of our purpose, to be an expression of God. And don't you just love that word opportunity? It's like, yeah, it sounds like a good thing, but how sometimes these opportunities can be kind of painful, or we struggle with them, or they don't feel like they're really a good thing. But the God and the universe conspires to place us in, to direct our path, or to place things in our path where we can learn more about ourselves, where we can learn more about our connection with God and how to express and live out of that place. Then we looked at the idea that we only see part of the picture, the idea about misperceptions. It's a great thing to remember, and I tell myself this 100 times a day: I do not know the whole story. You can read something in the newspaper, you can hear somebody say something, you can observe even what someone is doing, and you might think that you know what's going on. But the truth is, we do not know the whole story. We do not know the whole story. And what happens, because our minds are so great and creative and imaginative, is that we don't like blanks. We don't like unfilled spaces. And so we put into the unknown parts, into those gaps, what our understanding is, what our beliefs are, what our attitudes are, how we're feeling that day, which could be, it could be great, it could be not so great. And we fill in the blanks, and we actually create a whole new story. We create our perception of what happened or what was said. So we always want to remember we don't know the whole story, and that actually we fill in the blanks with our story. Then we looked at the idea, Gary had 4 winds of conflict, and they were separation. This is how we get drawn into the storm. We feel separated. We think that people are against us, or situations are against us, or that there's something always trying to trip us up. We feel separated from God. We forget about our oneness. There's also the idea of competition, that we think we have to fight for what is ours, that we have to defend what is ours, that we need to take what's ours. But when we studied the 10 Commandments in a metaphysical sense during a series back in May, the thing we learned is that nothing can keep our good from us. Nothing. If it's ours by right of consciousness, if it's what we need and what we are drawing to us, nothing can keep it from us, and no one can take it away from us. So we don't need to be competitive. We don't need to fight for what we think we deserve or what is ours. And then the other 2 things were defensiveness and misperception, which I talked about a little bit. Also, we talked about the idea that conflict, guess where the conflict lies? Don't you just hate it? It's actually in us. We think that there's conflict, or we see things that are conflicting out in the world, and we think that brings us into the conflict. But the truth is that when something happens to us, or something is said to us that rubs up against our values and our sense of who we are and our worth, it creates a conflict in us. That's where we start to struggle, and where we can say, that's not right, or I don't believe that. We come up with this conflict in ourselves. And so it's not our job to fix the conflicts that we think we see outside of ourselves, to make it right. It's an inside job. We need to find the place where our values have been trampled on, or where we've been drawn out into the storm, where we missed the mark, and do that work in ourselves to resolve that conflict. Nothing outside of ourselves. And last week we talked about the idea that we all share the same purpose. Anybody remember what it is? I tested the class on Wednesday. Anybody remember what our purpose is? Because we all have the same purpose. To be an expression of God. Each one of us have the same purpose. To be the way of God, to be the life of God, to be the truth of God. And how are we the way of God? There's that great little phrase that Gary had, either we are the way of God or we are in the way of God. So when we are the way of God, we are letting God express through us, beautifully and brilliantly and fully, all the things that God is. Love and peace, wisdom, understanding, order, joy, compassion, strength, all of those things. When we are expressing those things, we are the way of God. When we're the life of God, we bring life into the situations. We acknowledge that there's growth, that life is changing and organic and shifting, and that things don't stay the same. And when we acknowledge that, we are the life of God. And the truth of God, when we hold to our principles, when we stand in what we know is true, our inner truth, our spiritual truths, then we are standing for the truth of God. And then, of course, we have the great symbol for this series, the eye of the storm, with all the big kind of confusion around the outer parts, and then this perfect place of balance and poise and peace in the middle. And because what happens, life happens, It's not, the idea is not to get rid of the storm, because the storm is always going to be there. Stuff always happens. You could just be perfectly poised and centered in one moment, and you get a phone call, it just, boom, knocks you right off. Things out of our control. So there's going to be storms, and there's going to be stuff happening. But our choice is, do we live out of the storm? Do we live out of the confusion and the uncertainty and the fear? Or do we live out of the eye in the middle with God? Jesus gave us a great formula for living life. And he says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all these things shall be added unto you. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. And the eye of the storm is the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is where we connect with God, where we are one with God, where we remember that God is our source. So I looked for examples of situations or people that lived this from this place of knowing, seek ye first the kingdom of God. Who do we know that has lived out of that principle? And I found a couple in the Old Testament, and one who has lived in our lifetime. So in 1 Kings, there's a great saga of King Solomon. And King Solomon, when he was a new king, his father, King David, died. He's the new king. He's mantled with this, huge kingdom and all the responsibilities. And in a dream one night, God says to him, what should I give to you? Can you imagine that? God asking you, what should I give to you? And King Solomon says, he recounts how God has honored and supported his father in all of his, in all of the reign before him, how he has brought the people together. And he says, and he's feeling the burden of being the new king of this huge kingdom. And so he asks for an understanding mind so that he can be a just and fair ruler. And God says, He says, I'm pleased with your answer. You did not ask for riches or long life or great wealth, because he could have, right? He said, you asked for a discerning mind, and so I will give you a discerning mind, and I will give you all the things that you didn't ask for long life, for riches, for honor. See how this says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added unto you. When King Solomon asked for this discerning mind, he was speaking from the eye of the storm, wasn't he? He wasn't thinking about all the responsibilities and how am I going to make the kingdom work, and if we have enough money to run the projects that need to be going on, and are they going to accept me as a new ruler, He didn't get caught up in the storm. He went to the eye, went to God and said, this is, for me to be a blessing to my position in my kingdom, this is what I need. And God said, great, I'll give you that, and I'll give you all the things that you didn't ask for. So, of course, King Solomon was known far and wide for his good judgment and wisdom, and then we have the story that perhaps some of you have heard about the two mothers who bring a baby to King Solomon, and they are arguing over which one is the true mother of this baby. And they're presenting their cases, and they are, presenting the history, and then she said that, and they said that, and then this happened, and each of them is trying to convince the king that this child is mine, that I'm the mother of this child. And so King Solomon says, okay, stop, bring me my sword, let me divide the child in half, and you can each have part of the child. Immediately, of course, the true mother says, no, stop. And she says, got the quote here, please, my lord, give her the child, do not kill him. And of course, he sees by her statement that she must be the true mother, and so he gives her the baby. So do you see how it's the same, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these things. There's a point where the true mother knew that, you know what, there's a bigger picture than what's going on. It's not that important that I have this child, that if I think I need it, I'm acting out of fear, and I'm acting out of limitation, I'm acting out of lack, I'm forgetting that God is in the picture. And so she gave up all that humanness. She said, I know that God is present, I know the child will be okay, it's okay. I don't, give the child to the other person. And here again, she sought the kingdom of God, and then what did she get? She ended up with her child. She got what she didn't ask for. So do we do this sometimes in life? This is what the Bible is about. All these stories in the Bible are about places and situations that we experience. It's not only stories of things that happened to people a long time ago and far away from here. We've probably all been in the position where we are torn and confused, and so we just asked for what was closest at hand, what would make us feel good for the moment, and maybe we got it, maybe we didn't. And then there's times when we kind of opened up to all that could be possible. We went to the I, we went to the place of abundance and prosperity, and we asked, and incredible things happened. Incredible things happened. So always we're when we look at these stories from the Bible, we're looking for ourselves in them. We're looking for where we have lived the same situation. And sometimes, I'll be the first to say the Old Testament is full of stories. It's not really, how you can be an example two ways, right? You can be an example where someone wants to emulate what you've done, or you can be an example by showing the person, this is not how to do it, right? And so the Bible is filled with both of those things. And so we need to look at those and think, okay, this is how I could do it, or, oh, I've done it like that before, and yeah, that didn't work out very good. In the spring, we studied Gandhi. I don't know if any of you remember that series, but he came to mind as another person who was seeking first the kingdom of God, who stayed connected with him, with his wholeness and his sense of oneness. And he talked a lot about non-resistance. Non-resistance being that we don't see the world and our world as a place of separation, where there's people on that side, I'm on this side, and you're on that side. That's resistance. That's where you get fighting. That's where you get adversarial roles. That's where you get defensiveness. Gandhi didn't see it like that. To him, we were all on the same side. That's non-resistance, because there's no resistance if we're all one. So one of the stories that came to my mind was when he went to England for some meetings, and when he was there, he wanted to go speak to the mill workers, the cotton mill workers. And he was strongly advised, by the people around him, no, you really don't want to go there, because actually they are really mad at you. Because of you and your work in India, they are out of work. And there are tens of thousands of people who were, back in that time, when you were laid off, that was it. You didn't have any more income. People were starving. People were living in poverty. People were angry. Tens of thousands of people. Gandhi said, I want to go talk. I want to speak with them. I want to be with them. Because what he knew is that there's no win and lose, that we are all on the same side. And so he went and he spoke with them for hours, and it shows pictures, I don't know if he had any broad, microphone or anything, but there was thousands of people gathered out to hear what this man had to say to us who are out of work and are starving. And by the time he got done talking with them, they were cheering him. They understood what he was doing, and they supported his work. Because he came from that place, he came from the I, he came from that place that there is no separation. And what he said is, when you talk to someone who appears to be in an adversarial role with you, find the common ground. Find the place where you agree on something. And then he said, find it, listen to them, listen. Find that place where you have an agreement point, and then when you speak, you start from that place.